Hello there everyone, welcome to Second Thought's overview of Azhag the Slaughterer of the Greenskins. Now, I went through the initial turns and checked a bit of how the faction plays out, its strengths and weaknesses basically. In the end, I'll give you some of the army compositions that I would try on my own campaign so that you can use or adapt of course to your playstyle. Now this is an overview, but not an in-depth guide. Without further ado, let's play with Azhag the Slaughterer. For the short victory condition, we need to control 5 provinces, including the Northern World's Edge Mountains, your starting one, Ostermark, River Orskay, or basically Kislev, Ostland, a little bit farther away, and the Peak Pass. Pretty much really close by. Everything is really close, really easy to come by. You also need to occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements. Achieving this, the reward is pretty useful throughout the early to late game, +3 to recruit rank to all armies. Really nice, just to get better units of recruitment. Now, long victory. It requires you to achieve the short victory conditions, to occupy Loot Razor Sack 75 different settlements, and then to destroy a bunch of factions. To summarize, all of this is the minor Greenskin factions. They're located all over the place, you can see here, but plenty of them will be destroyed on their own by, you know, all of them kind of start at war with a major foe, so don't worry too much on this. The advantage here is, without speaking too much of the mechanics, is that you'll always be able to confederate these factions with a single battle if you know how. It's very easy. It's pretty much exactly how it is supposed to go as well. So it may seem like, even for me at the first sight, it seemed, whoa, really long campaign, but no, it actually it's kind of average in terms. I believe even to reach the 75 different settlements would be more difficult than to do this. Now, global recruitment capacity +2 faction right, of course. This is nice to ensure that you can get nearly instant full stacks in the mid to late game. Now, Azhag has the Evil Crown, which means that he enjoys diplomatic relations with Vampire Count and Arkan the Black. Now, the Wog also has a chance to contain Wyverns, more on that later. Research rate +20%, if you know me, I really love the research, so yeah, that's a welcoming buff. And income from sacking settlements +25%. So whenever if possible, of course, you should be sagging settlements just to benefit from that. In terms of climate, well, it's slightly better than I believe in Grimgur, because the places that you're going to conquer, of course, you won't need to go upwards to the north too much. You can just go south and conquer that way and just remain a defensive posture here maybe. But yeah, plenty of good places to capture and to conquer. Some minor issues such as Ulthuan here if you wish to go for a domination campaign, and of course the northern area may be problematic, but well, nothing that you can't really handle. So I would say this is like a good faction to go for a total domination if you wish, but yeah, your choice of course. It's still rather a problem the way you switch, but still a nice one to go. In case you need them, of course, the typical debuffs that you will get for unpleasant climate and uninhabitable climate. My biggest take is actually in the construction time and the income from buildings and the casualty replenishment rate. Everything else is kind of fine. Control, truth, it's not really that meaningful. Recruitment duration, typically you won't use that for recruitment, but yeah, everything else it's really meaningful, especially to me. The casualty replenishment rate, it's crazy bad, so that's an issue there. So your starting province is a 3-settlement province, but you lack any special buildings, just a resource building later on. It is well placed to be quite defensible, but soon you'll need to decide whether you go into this area, or if you go to the south, and all of those will just imply more enemies and difficult position to defend, really. Now, typical expansion will drive you, of course, with wars with the Empire, other Greenskins, or the Dwarves as well. Kislev is probably a given too, of course. It's probably a given, since you really need to capture that area for the river of Kislev itself to win the short victory condition. Although who knows if they might go towards the north this time and you can just settle down a little bit to the south. Who knows? It's maybe consolidating is actually like maybe an issue here, which is, other than a couple of provinces here, I do not see a lot of good consolidation places. So maybe having to expand to the empire or having to expand to this area would be required to have, you know, a more solid base, but it's not like you're tucked into a corner. It's basically not, really. You're in the middle of things. So, diplomatically, you're part of the evil clan. Welcome. Vampire Count and later Archon, if he's alive, of course, later on, if you can manage to contact him before he dies, or, well, maybe he'll become a powerhouse. But yeah, it's a choice, especially because your lord does have those buffs with Vampire Counts and Archon, so, yep, they will become your main friends. Although you may have problems getting something in the first turns, as soon as you start defeating some of their rivals, some of their enemies, like the Dwarves, the Empire, for sure you'll get some alliances or small treaties done that will convert into getting an outpost. Now the Order Tide, of course, and later Chaos will be your most likely enemies for sure. Outposts therefore will fall over maybe the typical Skaven. Maybe you can get Throg there to assist you, or Vampire Counts, of course, and then maybe Arkham if you get him before he dies. So Skaven ranged units and some Tomb Kings units, of course, some good constructs, some good halberds, which you lack. Basically, you do have big guns, but it's not the same. It isn't. And then some Vampire Count units, maybe their flying units, which is really cool, some of their good cavalry. Yeah, these will prove helpful. If you can go for them, by all means, it should be a welcoming addition to your forces. Speaking of mechanics, the Confederation is quite simple for the Greenskins. It's via diplomacy as usual, or just beating a rival faction leader in a battle, and you'll be prompted to absorb that faction into your empire. Basically, you'll get a prompt such as the one you're seeing right now. It's pretty easy to overcome, it's pretty easy to do, so all that you need, it's pretty loreful as well. You find their biggest boss, and you defeat him, and then suddenly they'll all follow you. That's basically how it works. In terms of the walk, it's also a great mechanic. Basically, you keep fighting until this bar over here fills up, such as it is right now. You'll get some debuffs if it is too little, and you'll get some buffs that will grow up to the point that, yeah, you know, having over 76 like you see there. Growth all provinces, it's crazy good. You know, leadership is always welcoming because Greenskins do lack a little bit of that. Recruitment costs, winds of magic, yeah, all nice buffs, let's say. But then when you declare the war, of course, that's where things kick in. So when you do declare, you need to select a target. And as you can see, there's a different thing here. The faction strength rating, I'll show you what that means in a bit. So, if you would conquer this place, you declare a war, you will conquer this place, you would get charge bonus faction-wide and control to all provinces. That is because of how this is from human factions. But if you go for elves, for instance, the bonus changes. It's research rate, ammunition faction-wide, and missile strength faction-wide. If you go against the dwarves, for instance, construction cost reduction, weapon strength faction-wide. So, as you can see, you will have to choose, and then it will give you a banner, basically, that will allow you to have that banner displayed here. To get those, the trophy will give you those bonuses, of course. So it's basically a good, nice choice, and it adds something else. The faction strength rank, as you can see there, this will give me the bigger trophy. Factions rank from 11 to 30, so the higher the faction that you choose, the better the amount, let's say, or the numbers in those buffs that you've seen. So yeah, going against Karakadrin here seems to be cool. You can also dedicate to Mork or to Gork, and basically what simply changes is how you know, everyone to Mork will have missile strength plus 10%, and everyone will, for Gork, will have weapon strength instead of missile strength. So let's go for Gork, and I'll start up the Dwarven conflict. And now what happens? Basically, I have to conquer this place. It's the target of the war, and all my armies now are starting to build up a secondary army that joins them in battles. Pretty cool, pretty cool, pretty cool idea. Now, you do have 20 turns, as you see there, to manage to capture it, so make sure that you're well within range to capture that place. Now, another mechanic is the scrap mechanic. I'll show you here. You do gather scrap for many things, mostly from looting, raiding, and battling, of course, through battles. It's your unique currency, and use it to upgrade units. Now, to upgrade those units, you can give them several different ones. Azhag actually has the wizardly weapons, which is nice, you know, armor piercing weapon damage is always cool, and some power recharge to you. But they can give them padded shields, for instance, to these orc boys, or reinforced weapons. Now, every single unit has different ones, which means that you will have some cool ideas and cool customization for what you wish. For example, you can go into the orc Arab boys and you can give them some reload time reduction, or you can give them some armor, so they'll be better at facing off any enemies, or they'll just produce more damage over time. So yeah, it's all up to you guys. The scrap mechanic, really a nice one. I really love it. It just makes sure that when you show an army like this to anyone, you better have the scrap that you're willing to choose, because that can change drastically how the army will be. Now, you also have some specific recruitments of renown, regiments of renown. So recruitment of regiments of renown. These are granted by achieving a log. So basically, you can have lava riders, spider archers. You can have lava arachnarok spider. You can have a feral hydra, a feral wyvern. So yeah, these are all nice additions. Some specific ones that you may get, although expensive, they're really well worth it. So yeah. That's another good and nice mechanic from the Greenskins. In terms of edicts, they're simple and effective. So construction, you'll have the construction costs, and income from all buildings, which I have selected. You also have a basic control, growth, corruption, anything that improves the place, basically the province. And then you have the brag about the boss. Recruitment cost -10% and local recruitment capacity +1. Now, something that should be noted is how, I'll mention it, the buildings again, but local recruitment capacity increases by the number of settlements, which means that with this local recruitment capacity you can actually get quite a lot of slots. Let me just show you that you have 5 already, so that would be 6. Greenskins can recruit really fast, which is also great. That for me seems a tactical advantage. Like, you can see an enemy and you don't need to have an army really well prepared. You can just recruit one in a couple of turns and that's it. Okay? Now, in terms of the army itself, the army stances, you do have raiding camp. It allows scrap per turn, do note, it's sometimes overlooked. And replenishment, immune to attrition, enables access to global recruitment pool, of course. And it costs 0 movement, which is excellent. You can always stand on a raiding camp all the time, which is really cool, perfect at any moment. Now, underway is such a tactical notion stance, a mechanic in itself. This will help in particular giving your starting location in mountains. You can just pop that up without having moved anything. I believe the only thing that you can do is actually leave a settlement to activate this. That's the only thing that you can do in terms of, let's say, movement. Okay, and then you can pop the underway and just go wherever it would allow you in terms of the range. Let me see if I could use it here. Let me see. I believe not, because I have moved. Yeah, so this army has moved. But yeah, basically that's the idea. You can move within the range instantly there, and without, you know, there's a small chance of the interception. Of course, be wary of that. Ambush, of course, 25% movement range. You've all seen this, and the typical forced march as well. So again, not something that is spotted immediately, but you get local recruitment capacity with the number of settlements. So yeah, always remember that one. Now, there are 7 buildings that are required to, military buildings, of course, they're required to get every single unit. However, only one of them can be built in minor settlements. So you'll most likely require a second province to fully build every single military building and still have an income. Now, we do have a barracks that allows good combinations of units, such as, you know, an anti-large unit, some nasty skulkers, they're good early game, some arrow units. You do have the recruitment of a hero unit. So yeah, that's excellent. You have some trolls that tier 3 are really cool. You can get goblin rock lobbers and some chariot units with tier 3 as well. So yeah, don't overlook those tier 3 units. They're still quite decent. Now, tier 4 has nearly everything that you really need. The Black Orcs, some of the Night Goblin Archers and Fanatics, if you wish, the Arachnodox Spider, which definitely should be tier 5. You'd still have your biggest shock cavalry there with the Orc Boar Boy Biggins, I hate the name, and the Doom Diver Catapults. You also have Giants on tier 4. That's nice. It would be neat if this was like the Beastmen in tier 3, but still. I think the Greenskins don't really need that. So yeah. In terms of tier 3 late game units, I think the only one would be maybe the Stone Trolls that you can definitely use in in the late game, maybe. Some of the Goblin Rock Lobbers, of course. But yeah, in essence, that's what you do have. And of course the Rogue Idol tier 5. Infrastructure. It does have a nice control building and some corruption reduction, of course, and their hero capacity for goblin big bosses. And you do have the typical growth and casualty replenishment rate. This is very important for the Greenskins. They don't have a lot of bonuses there. So yep. And income. Of course, really nice income building, and suddenly a jack of all trades, like I like to say. Campaign movement range, income from post-battle loot, income from raiding to all armies. That's really cool. So yeah, having a couple of these where you may, it's really nice, excellent. So be wary, be sure that you have as accordingly the ones that you can. In terms of research, let's talk research. It's really powerful. Not only you can buff up most, you know, early game troops and then high quality troops, but there are two lord specific ones. The Rachnik Spider Claw. This one is great to make a spider army. It's really excellent. I really love that one. And you also have Oglut the Horrible, which is good to make a cavalry. You can see the bonuses there for Orc Boar units and Orc Infantry units. So yeah, he's really cool for that. Two different lords. You can definitely have some specific army compositions for them for some variety. So I always loved when CA added something like this. It's really nice, and it allows some more variety, of course. So your skills are divided, of course, into Lord specific, the yellow line or melee line, the magic line, of course. Then you have red line or army, and blue line or campaign. Azhag has quite some nice buffs, both for his units or some cool different spells, such as the Wind of Death, which is excellent. So yeah, some different bonuses that he can have, some hero capacity, hero recruit rate for shamans. So yeah, that's a good lord right there. Now, Redline, it's one of the best in the game, honestly. Just because you can get the sort of wide variety of units that you can get, because they organize this by orc infantry units, orc units basically, and then goblin based units. This just implies that you can have such a range of different army compositions without spending too much in the Redline skills. I believe it's one of the cheapest in the game, actually, in terms of how many units you can actually get and how many rolls you can actually get of units without having to spend too much. You know, that's the idea. Now, also some armor compositions, of course, and you'll see this. Now, the blue line does have a hero, the upkeep reduction here, but it does lack replenishment. For a long time, Greenskins had an issue with replenishment. Now it has been slightly reduced, but still, it's kind of their problem. They can compensate this by having, you know, easier to recruit functions. So you know, you have more recruit capacity, some bonuses there. So yeah, that's great. They typically will have more income-based stuff, so you can choose whether you wish to sack or loot settlements, or just be raiding all the time and just benefit from that. So yeah, that's of course your idea. In terms of heroes, let me talk a little bit of the heroes here. Actually, maybe go to the other place. So the Black Orc Big Boss, it doesn't say here, but he does provide some replenishment for Orc units. So if you have a roster based solely on Orc units, of course, take this guy. You can also have the Giant River Troll Hag for more replenishment as well. So yeah, that's always, for me at least, it would be essential if you plan to use that army in a uninhabitable climate or unpleasant climate. You can plan out those things, for instance. Okay, you can say, oh, I'm going to have just an army with a river hag, and I'll send it towards Archeon. That will be nice. You also have some Orc Shamans, of course, and you do have the Goblin Big Boss here, sort of a melee hero there. So yeah, good hero compositions that you can have, and even lord compositions that you can have. So yeah, it's since it is one of the least expensive troop rosters, you can take advantage of that as well, and you have upgraded units and even heroes in no time. You know, upgraded lords, you know, going into the melee line or just the blue line, whatever, because you don't have to spend too much in the red line, at least if you plan to do that. Of course, you may wish to just go a big boss full in the yellow line, you know, or just some campaign bonuses, up to you, of course. So here we have every single red line skill and the units that are affected by it. You can see that it's really difficult to put all of this in just one screen, because there's so many units, so many varieties. I also love that in the Greenskins. They have a lot of small tweaks that you can benefit from to enjoy different army compositions, of course. Notice, of course, all the Orc units here, including, you know, the typical units that you will send against the anti-large, basically, the typical units that we send, you know, as a front line, arrow units. So yeah, all of that just helps that you can muster good armies without having to spend too much in terms of red line skills. Now, Azhag has great skills to upgrade orcs and cavalry units, including their speed, some frenzy, of course, so as well as Vanguard over there, which is excellent for, you know, an army that would just try to get close as soon as possible and get some ambushes going. So that's why I'm focusing like this, you know, an army more focused on the orc units, some good monsters just to help over there. But yeah, in this case, it will be a solid front line, of course, of units, some missiles, maybe to catch up some flying units or something like that, you know, just ensuring that there's no threats on that, like a dragon or something like that, and also a basic, let's cavalry charge them to the ground. Your infantry will definitely do really well in the front line, so you don't have to worry too much about hammer and anvil. So just bringing extra cavalry, of course, 2 units against 1, you'll always more than likely benefit from that. Now, this is more of an army to go against, maybe on ambush, because you lack any ranged units, but also the idea that most of these units have do a great job against large units. So maybe if you go against the ogres, for instance, if you choose to go into that path, maybe this is an army that you would go with. You see, notice how cheap it is in terms of red line skills to buff all of these units. So yeah, that's also something that I wanted you to notice. We then have some specific armies, considered the Goblin, Great Shaman, and Night Goblin War Boss. Now, some cheap goblin armies, these will surprise you, actually, especially with the monster support. These will be good sweeper armies. Of course, don't count on them too much to survive against larger, you know, don't send these guys against a stack of Chosen. That's what I mean. They'll do some damage, but they'll die. Still, it's a good sweeper army to conquer everything around your main armies who will engage, you know, those main battles, or just to support. It's a nice army. I believe one of my playthroughs I had like these armies costing 3,000 to 4,000 less gold than the average orc army, so that's significant, guys. And they were still really great. These guys can conquer small minor settlements really well. So finally, you do have some standard armies, basically. You know, this overall a standard army, some trolls joining the black orcs and the front line, some arachnid spiders to deal with anyone that is anti-large, one of the best anti-large units in the game. Then you can replace those, perhaps some doom divers who have some range, and some rock lobbers, with some rogue idols, of course, because, you know, they're made of rocks, and yeah. Made rocks. Then, of course, some different compositions, as you can see here, without relying any missile units, just having some chariots, some cavalry over there, or just for the fun of it, maybe an army focused on just really quick units. Really massive monsters, as you can see here, some chariots to cause havoc, then the trolls arrive and they just finish up everything, while the doom divers just soak up any artillery. Notice again how cheap they are in terms of red line skills, guys. So as final conclusions, Azhag does bring a nice change from Grimgor's position over there. It's a much simpler, shorter victory condition as well, so it's definitely one that I would choose if all that I wanted was to briefly check how the faction works and then decide whether or not I wish to continue, you know. He's in a difficult position early on, but certainly has the tools to fight it, I would say. Now, the combination of his death magic as well, and the possible alliances with vampire counts may prove yet to be the most interesting part in terms of a Greenskins alternative. Figure out how best to combine these elements so that you can get the maximum of its experience. Now, typical armies will consist of great damage-dealing infantry, good missiles and artillery, great monsters and single entities, good chariots, cheap units in all categories. That's for certain. You'll always have cheap everything, basically. Cheap cavalry, cheap missile cav, cheap infantry, cheap anything. It does lack anti-large halberd infantry, not that you will need with black orcs and big guns, but still, it does lack those, and has average cavalry. Replenishment is a rather average as well. Average to bad, depending on where you go and whether or not you decide to have some heroes with you that will assist in terms of the replenishment. One note, given the army compositions that I mentioned before, is how you can always choose different armies in terms of how many heroes or what type of lord you choose. Just be certain that you at least have a thought process on that. Maybe you'll bring this sorcerer hero because you want to do that spell to improve that unit. That sort of idea. That's what I always recommend. Now, I believe now for a wonderful small change for a Greenskins campaign, you should follow Mr. Azhag, the Slaughterer.